I'm Julie Goodwin, Chief Communications Officer at the American Film Institute. Welcome to AFI Fest 2020 and to AFI Summit presented by Audi. And to today's session, EW's The Awardist, a conversation with director Julia Hart and Rachel Brosnahan, moderated by Maureen Lee Lenker of Entertainment Weekly. First, I want to thank our supporters of the festival, our presenting sponsor, Audi, our AFI members, and of course, all of you who have joined us today. Congratulations to our guests, Julia and Rachel, on AFI's opening night film, I'm Your Woman, and thank you so much for being here with us. Our moderator is Maureen Lee Lenker. Maureen is an award-winning journalist at Entertainment Weekly, where she covers film, television, books, and theater. Before coming to EW, she worked with a number of media outlets, including Turner Classic Movies, Ms. Magazine, LA Weekly, Hollywood Reporter. She holds a master's degree from USC in entertainment journalism and another in British history from the University of Oxford. And now, Maureen, over to you.
Thank you so much, Julie. Hi, everybody. We're so happy to have you here today. I am thrilled to be discussing I'm Your Woman, the opening night film of AFI Fest, which is a 1970s crime drama written and directed by Julia Hart and starring Rachel Brosnahan as Jean, a woman on the run who finds herself coming into her own as she has to make sense of her life by herself for the first time ever. So welcome, Julia and Rachel. It's so great to have you both here.
Hi, thank you for having us.
We're so excited to be here.
Well, I wanted to start by asking about your meet cute. How did you come together on this project? I know, Julia, I know this was something that was percolating with you for a long time until you really felt ready to tackle it. And why was Rachel part of that equation of feeling ready?
So Jordan Horowitz, my husband slash writing partner slash producer, and I had started working on the script about 5-6 years ago. And I think around that time, we first watched House of Cards, and Rachel's performance in that was so good. And then we kept revising the script and working on it, made a couple of other movies, kept coming back to it, wanted to wait until we felt like it was the right time to make it. And it was around that time that we saw the first season of Mrs. Maisel. And we were like, how is this the same person? I've joked that, and it's a joke, but it's also the truth, that Rachel is a character actor in a movie star's body. I think she's capable of playing such different characters. There were moments on set where I forgot that it was her. She had disappeared so much into the character. And so it was just sort of like the perfect timing of when we felt like we were ready to make the movie, and when we knew that Rachel was the right person for it.
Yeah, and Rachel, how did you come on board? What was it about Jean that appealed to you?
The script was absolutely beautiful. I read the script without having met Julia before, although I had seen Miss Stevens and then later watched Fast Color, and was such a fan of Julia's work, and was so heart leaks through the screen of Julia's movies. And I felt like, having read the script, I understood this character in a new way, having seen Julia's work, and then getting the opportunity to sit down and talk with Julia about the script and the character. I couldn't stop thinking about our meeting and hearing Julia talk about how long they'd been working on this project and what it meant to her and Jordan, and listening to her talk about the character helped me understand Jean in a brand new way. But she also, I'm definitely attracted to movies about projects about women finding themselves and their voices. And this was a brand new journey down that same path. And I love that it felt so different from anything that I've been working on in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Julia, the film really reclaims 1970s crime dramas for female protagonists. What inspired that, and what films might have been a jumping off point for you?
So I'm a huge fan of the genre. I love late 70s, early 80s crime dramas, even though they never fully represented me. And it's funny because they all have these amazing female characters played by these amazing actresses, but they're all supporting roles. Diane Keaton in The Godfather, Tuesday Weld and Thief. And while James Caan and Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman in Straight Time, like they're all amazing actors and really interesting, complex characters, so were the women. But, you know, when the action would get going in those movies, the woman would get kicked out. And I would always want to know what happened to her. Like, I always wanted to see that movie, you know? Like, where is she going? What's going to happen to her? Like, how is she going to survive? And so Jordan and I just decided, since we hadn't seen that movie, we would just go ahead and make it.
And Rachel, audiences are so used to seeing you perfectly coiffed in your beautiful 1950s silhouettes. What was it like trading that in for your natural blonde hair and some 70s threads?
It was so fun, and it was a relief. It was, you know, as much as I love that role and that project and have learned an incredible amount over the last couple of years getting to play Midge Maisel, it was so nice to put on literally a completely different skin in a way. It helped. I'm a huge fan of hair and makeup and wardrobe, and love collaborating closely with hair and makeup and wardrobe artists, as well as, you know, the director or writers to bring to life their vision. But I feel like a character isn't complete until you get to look in the mirror and see them in front of you. And it was fun to be able to catch Jean's reflection in a mirror during certain scenes and not recognize myself. It helped me dive deeper into this character, and I'm so grateful for the permission from all the different departments who made that possible. It was a real natural color, but a lot of fun.
With that rich cinematic history that you're both drawing on, did you guys have any kind of like viewing parties or like lists that you traded back and forth? Was there anything like that happening in the process?
We definitely, I wish we had, you always think like when you get to location, you're always like, let's have a screening every week with the whole crew. And then of course, nobody ever has time to do that because you're all so busy. Not to mention that I also have my kids with me on location. So it's definitely a full plate, but we definitely traded lists. And also with Bryce, our DP, collected a bunch of images from those movies and had them up on the walls in our production office.
I watched Thief before we got out to Pittsburgh, but watching it in Pittsburgh felt like a totally different thing. Just felt a connection to Tuesday Weld's character in Thief in a way that even though I knew that movie had been so important to you guys in writing this script and has been an inspiration, it wasn't until we were in Pittsburgh, days from shooting this movie, when I rewatched that movie, that I suddenly felt like a piece of Jean cracked open.
That's awesome. Yeah, of all of the movies that we drew inspiration from, and there are some pretty direct references to a lot of those movies in I'm Your Woman, but the most direct references are definitely to Thief. And we actually thank Michael Mann in the end credits because
where the title comes from, right, Julia?
Yes. So there's a scene in Thief where Tuesday Weld says to James Caan, "I'm your woman and you're my man," and that was a click moment for me when we were in the writing process. I was like, oh, that'd be a good title.
So the clip that we are sharing with our audiences today is from early in the film, when Jean first meets the baby that she's going to go on this journey with. It's brought home by her husband. Can you guys talk about filming that scene and just what it was like for both of you in terms of calibrating, because it is really setting the tone for the journey we're going to go on, and the relationship Jean's going to have with the baby and how that's going to evolve going forward?
Well, something that I think is very unique about this movie in general, but certainly to the crime drama genre, is that a baby is a main character. And it's a really challenging thing to do. There's a reason there aren't a lot of babies in movies, and there's a reason when there is a baby, it's often a fake baby, is because babies can only work 4 hours a day. Babies can't act. Babies can't find their light. Babies can't hit their mark. They're just living their lives. And so it was really incredible working with Justin and Jameson Charles and their mom, Caitlin, the boys who play Baby Harry, because they just brought such like urgency and having to be in the moment on set And it led to some really magical stuff for all of the actors to be working with this being that's just living its life.
It kept us honest, for sure, in front of and behind the camera. You know, we go in with lofty ideas about what we want scenes to look like and feel like, and things that, you know, we talked about this a lot before we made the movie, but there was a lot of stage direction for Baby Harry that ultimately kind of got thrown out the window. But in its place, sometimes really magical things happen. I mean, there was a scene, without giving anything away, where we're sitting down together. That's what I was gonna say. and the baby, I think it was Jameson, fell asleep and was sleeping, and the entire scene then became about genuinely not waking up a sleeping baby, and it changed the whole thing and brought this electricity into the space. I mean, it, as Julia said, it was definitely tough, but man, they were troopers, and they added this beautiful layer to this film that I don't know that I've ever seen before in a movie.
And this scene in particular, it was cool because we got to shoot most of the film in order, in part because of the structure of the story and the script, but also because this, you know, babies, they were 5.5 months old when I met them, and they were about 6 months old when we started shooting. And babies at that age grow pretty noticeably, pretty quickly. And so it was really cool to get to shoot the whole film in order to track their growth, so they kind of grow over time as opposed to suddenly, you know, jumping in size and age throughout the movie. And so it's so funny to me when I watch the beginning of the movie now, because they're so tiny. So there's something really powerful in that first moment when Eddie, Bill Heck, walks in the door with the baby, and he's so big and so tall, and the baby is so tiny and so helpless.
Oh, is she gonna say something?
Is some kind of sick joke, Eddie? Because I'm not really in the mood.
No. It's a baby, Jean.
I can see that.
It's all worked out. He's our baby. You can.
Where did you...
I'm not now, Jean. Sure, baby.
What's his name?
That's up to you.
Rachel, so much of the film is just you and baby Harry, and we're just on the two of you. Was that really challenging? I mean, does it make it harder or easier to be present when you're working with such an unpredictable scene partner?
Both. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever done, but I'm so proud of some of the moments that emerged through our relationship. And we did develop a really special relationship, those babies and I, alongside Jean. Like Julia said, you know, they started scooting and almost crawling during the time that we knew them. As someone who doesn't have children, I've never spent that much time with a baby that age and watched them develop. it was tough. You know, we're not on their same schedule, and they in some ways had to adjust to ours, but obviously they don't know what's happening. They can't do that. We shared a cold or two back and forth. But ultimately, as I said, I think it adds a really special layer to the film and taught me a lot about being present. Even when you think you're being present as an actor, you're never as present as when you're holding a living, breathing baby who you can feel physically responding to your emotional state. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. One of the other wonderful things about this film is how it talks about race in America, particularly in this period in history. And it's always implicit. It's never really explicit. It's just all through how Jean is interacting. For both of you, how did you go about calibrating that and, making it a thread that is always running through the storytelling, but never having like, we're going to talk about this in really direct terms right now in this scene?
So as much as, again, I love all of those 70s crime dramas in the same way that they don't fully represent women, they also a lot of the time don't represent, in particular, Black characters, but in general also people of color. And so it was really important to me, if I was going to be focusing on this white woman's journey, that we also include the people in the world around her, and that in the case of the story happened to be this Black family. And I think something that's really important to the film is that we're always in Jean's perspective. And that's where the lack of explicitly talking about it comes from, because we're inside Jean's head for the whole movie. And so what Rachel and Marcia Stephanie Blake, who plays Terry, and Arinze Kene, who plays Cal, and I were all trying to do was to stay in Jean's perspective of this very privileged white woman who had spent her whole life in this, white suburban bubble, having that burst and seeing what the real world is like and understanding the struggles that she has as a woman, but then also seeing how they are very different from the struggles of Cal, a Black man, and then even more different in some ways from Terry, who is a Black woman. And so it was really important to us to show that side of America in the 1970s, and sadly, that we're still struggling with today through Jean's eyes opening to what the world is really like around her.
Yeah, I mean, as far as my perspective in it, it's all in the writing. Jean is so present and in the moment. I know how much thought Julia and Jordan put into sensitively tackling this issue, and how important it felt to not make it feel like something that we were including through the lens of today, but rather something that feels organic to this story. And so as far as playing Jean through those stories, it was just, again, about being in the moment and understanding Jean's own limitations in terms of her relationship to literally everything, her relationship to herself, her relationship to womanhood, her relationship to the larger world around her. Everything is new, and that remains one of the biggest challenges of playing a role like this is again maintaining that level of being present that sometimes feels elusive when obviously we know how stories like this have played out today.
Yeah. Another really cool metaphor in the film is driving as sort of independence and seizing agency. And I don't want to get too much into spoilers for those who haven't had a chance to watch yet, but Julia, how did you decide exactly where it would come for Jean in the script? And then Rachel, what was it like filming that? I feel like we really seen you drive on screen before.
Tell me about it.
Well, I'll let Rachel talk about that part. But yeah, I loved the idea. Cars are such an important part of 70s crime dramas from any period. Even in movies like Gun Crazy, and obviously all of the movies we referenced, here as well, like 70s movies, cars are such an important part of those movies. And I love the idea of taking that idea of the car that is so important in the genre and exploring a woman's relationship to it, you know, that her husband, you know, she says in the film, Jean says, you know, my husband wouldn't even let me drive the car. And then of course, like where we end up at the end of the film in terms of Jean being in the driver's seat.
Yeah. And Rachel, what was that like?
In terms of literally being in the driver's seat, those cars are fun. They're challenging to drive. They feel like toys. Yeah, it was fun. I've definitely felt that sense of agency driving those cars. We did have to drive one of them with a rig on the front down one of those streets, and that was only a little bit terrifying.
You also had to drive with the rig up the dirt road.
Oh, right. That fight. Yeah.
You had to do it twice.
There's a shot without at some point in the movie where I had to drive up a very steep road with the camera rig in front of my eyes, and I was just going, I hope everyone's out of the way. But it did feel very freeing. Strangely, having done a fair amount of period pieces, although never the 70s, I've had to learn to drive various cars. I drove a van with a clutch and a whole situation in this movie, The Courier, a couple months, no, I guess about a year before we made this movie. Time is a flat circle. I have absolutely no idea. But it was a blast. It was another piece. I think period pieces are so fun because there's so many different pieces that help you feel like you've time traveled and transformed. We don't see cars like that anymore. I'd never driven a car like this that does feel so iconic, that feels so recognizable from all these movies that I also love. It was just one more cherry on the cake of pieces that made it feel like we all got to disappear into this time and this movie and this story.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time, but last question for you guys. The film is really reliant on its soundtrack. The music is incredible. Do each of you have a favorite needle drop from the movie?
Ooh.
All of them? I mean, my favorite one I don't want to say before people have seen the movie, but
Ooh.
It's at the midpoint and I still can't believe it's in the movie.
We also are big fans of the needle drop in the trailer. We've talked
exactly
about that one recently. Yeah, the music is such an important part of this movie. It's such an important part of setting the time and again, being inside of Jean's head. One of my favorite scenes, I think we played the music, didn't we? We had playback with the ironing board.
Yes. Yeah.
It doesn't give a lot away, but there's a scene where Jean is alone without the baby and without anyone around and is ironing a beautiful silk shirt. And what's the song that played? Why am I
The Faces, it's the Faces song.
Yes, exactly. And it feels like watching the movie back, even the places where we didn't have playback on the day, it feels like it further brings you inside of Jean's world and inside of this time and inside her head.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, but thank you, Julia and Rachel, so much for joining us. Thanks to everyone at home tuning in. And we'd love to hear from you all on social media. It's #AFIFest. And for more information on other summit sessions and our film packages, go to fest.afi.com. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.